Stephanie and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be creating a trio of cards and we're going to be doing some ink blending with the Big Balloon stencil. This is one of my favorite stencils because you get all of these different balloon shapes in the one stencil, and just with a little bit of masking you can use each of the balloons individually to create really fun designs on your cards. I've went ahead and picked out a bunch of rainbow colored distress inks, and those are the inks I'm going to be using for my card designs. But as always, if you prefer not to use a lot of colors, you can just kind of do an ombre look or keep everything monochromatic. I have a big roll of masking tape and I'm just cutting it up with my scissors to use it to create some masks. You want to make sure that you cover any of those open areas on the stencil so that you don't get ink where you don't want it on your panel. All of my panels are cut to 4 inches by 5 1/4, and I'm going to create 3 different card designs using the stencil. The first one here is going to be the one with the most balloons, so I'm going to use all of the colors of the rainbow and use a bunch of different shapes of balloons and kind of fill up a lot of this panel. So I started off with pink first, and you can see that I like to kind of have it really dark around the edges and kind of fade off towards the center. This is a great way to kind of make your balloons look like they are dimensional and not just completely flat. And because we're using distress inks, we can easily layer the ink over top of each other. So I'm going to overlap all of these balloons so you can kind of see one balloon in behind the other. You'll see what I mean a little bit more once we start to add all of the different colors over top of each other. When you move your stencil around to do each of the different colors, you do want to make sure that you're using a paper towel to wipe it off. Otherwise, you will kind of move some of the ink colors into different colors of the balloons. I also change out my masking tape as I go if it starts to kind of transfer the color. Once it gets kind of really saturated, sometimes that color moves from the masking tape into the balloon, so just kind of be careful of that when you're doing it. So now I'm working on the yellow balloon, and I'm making sure to do the yellow portion that overlaps the white first, just because when I go over the orange and the pink, I wasn't sure if I was going to kind of pull some of that color into the yellow, so I wanted to make sure I had the white area fully covered. Going on to the green balloon here, this is one of the long balloons. I'm going to put this one kind of overlapping the edge of the panel, so this one's going to kind of go off the side. And then I'm going to finish this off with a aqua and a purple balloon. So I'm kind of going in rainbow order, and I'm keeping everything towards the top and the right hand side of the panel. I just thought it was kind of a fun design, and I didn't want to fill the entire panel since it's already going to be very busy with the amount of balloons that we're adding on here. And just like I did with the other balloons, I am making sure to put a light coat of color all over the entire balloon first, and then I'm going in with a heavier hand around the outside edges just to really define the outside edges of the balloon. So now you can see how these are overlapping. I love using distress inks or any type of dye ink to do this technique because you can kind of see the color in behind the other color. It's not an opaque ink, it's more translucent, so you're able to overlap and get that really cool effect where it looks like all of these balloons are floating in front of each other. So to finish this off, I'm going to go ahead now with the purple. This is a very dark purple color, so I was very careful not to use too heavy of a hand at first. And then I finished off by darkening up the edges, and now we have all of our balloons on our panel. I love how this one turned out. I love all the multicolor. I love how they're overlapping and you can kind of see them in behind each other. I just think it's a really fun design, and this could be used for so many different occasions. You could use it for a birthday, a graduation, any type of thing where balloons is traditionally a fun way to celebrate. So moving on to the second card, I'm going to do this one a little bit less. I'm going to use 3 balloons on this one rather than all of the balloons I used on the first one. And I'm going to start this one off with a big balloon in the center. I'm also going to just be using 1 balloon stencil for this one, so I'm not going to change up the different designs. I actually prefer to use this large one the most. This is my favorite one out of all of them. And on this card, I really made sure to do the really dark edges and let the color kind of fade off towards the left-hand side of the balloon. I really wanted it to look like there was a highlight on the balloon, so I was very careful to really let that show since I'm not going to be doing very much overlapping on this design. So for this one here, I'm using that dark purple color. I am making sure to leave that highlight on the left-hand side. You can see it kind of goes off the edge of the panel. And then for the last one, I am going to do a little bit of an overlap on the green one. I'm going to use the Peacock Feathers Distress Ink to create an aqua balloon, and I'm kind of putting it half on the panel and half off. So I'm making sure you can see just a little bit of the bottom area of that balloon because I didn't want it to look like just a circle kind of floating in the air. And then even though I am overlapping the green area, I did make sure to let that lighten up on the left-hand side so everything looks like the light is coming from the same direction. This one here is probably my favorite out of all three that I'm going to create. I just really love how much the balloons pop off of the panel. With the really colorful one, it's pretty busy and they kind of mesh together. But with the second one here, all of the balloons kind of stand on their own and they look really dimensional with that highlight. So now for the last one, I decided to get a little creative and play around. I wasn't sure if this was going to work, so I just decided to see what would happen. So what I'm doing is I'm taking that same balloon I used on the second card. This is my favorite shape. And I'm putting it in the center of the panel. And what I'm going to do is just take all of the rainbow ink colors and I'm going to keep adding them to the same balloon, kind of in a stripe formation. And I'm making sure to use a little bit of a light hand because I wasn't sure how well I was going to be able to blend these. But my plan was going into it was to get all of the colors on the same balloon, have them blend really nicely together and create a multicolor rainbow balloon design. So I'm just going in with each color and kind of overlapping just a tiny bit and going down towards the bottom. And then I started to kind of go in a stripe formation as I was adding the ink here. I found it was a little bit easier because the blending tools are a little bit big for this smaller balloon. I think it would have been a little bit easier if I would have used finger daubers or something a little bit smaller to apply the ink. But I made it work. I just kind of kept going back and forth. I used a light hand so that I was able to really blend that ink together. And I just kind of kept adding ink in all of the different colors until I felt like I had a nice even transition between each color. And you can see here when I removed the stencil, it actually didn't turn out too badly. I love the multicolor look to it, just something a little bit different than doing all solid color. I did realize after I finished it though that I didn't quite get that balloon in the center of the panel, so I am going to trim that one down in just a minute here. So here's a look at all three of the designs. We have the first one, which is the really busy one where we've incorporated a bunch of balloons in all the rainbow colors. Then we have the second one, which has just 3 balloons and we don't have a lot of overlapping. And then we have the third one where we've just featured 1 balloon but did all of the colors in that single balloon. For the card bases, I picked out a color that I thought would coordinate nicely with each balloon. I usually like to pick a balloon that's in the center of the panel so that the color that I am using for the card base doesn't blend with one of the balloons that's going off of the edge. So for the first one, I used Summer Splash, I used Limelight for the second, and then for the third one, it didn't really matter, so I decided to go with a pink card base. So now that I have all the card bases picked out, I just need to put some finishing touches on the panels before I adhere them down. I'm going to stamp on the sentiments, and for that I'm going to use the Heap of Hellos stamp set. This is a really fun stamp set because it has all of these hello sentiments, but they're in really unique shapes that actually work really well with this balloon design. So for the first one, I used Hey There and stamped it right in the center of that multicolor balloon. For the second one, I thought the high went really nicely just because of how it's angled. It looks really cool against that turquoise balloon that's kind of overlapping the green one. And then for the last one, I wasn't really sure how well the sentiment was going to show up considering the fact that we have so much overlap and a lot of colors, but I went with the Hi There, which is a really tall sentiment, and I stamped it on the full balloon that we have in the panel, and it actually ended up looking really good there. So we're going to add some strings to our balloons now to finish this off. This is optional. If you like the look of just having the balloons without strings, you can definitely leave that. I wanted to add the strings, but I didn't want it to be super obvious. So I'm just using a gray pen that I use for journaling, and I'm using my T-square ruler, and I'm starting at the base of the panel and bringing that line up to the base of the balloon. And then I'm drawing a little bit of a line around the end area of the balloon there just to make it look like the string is actually tied to the balloon. I'm going to do that on all of my cards and make sure every balloon has a string. So you can see now with the gray, it's kind of lighter, but you definitely can see that string there. And I just really like how it grounds each of the balloons. So once I had the lines drawn on, I finished all 3 cards by adding the card panels to the bases. And then I also added some clear sequins to the 2 cards that have multiple balloons. Once I had the sequins attached, I used some Stardust stickles to fill the centers. And then that is going to complete our trio of cards. So I hope today's video gave you some ideas on ways that you can use the balloon stencil to create some different card designs with a little bit of ink blending and a simple stamp sentiment. If you enjoyed today's video, I would love it if you would give it a thumbs up. And please subscribe and click that bell to be notified of future MFT videos. As always, I appreciate you being here and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks so much for watching.